Meeting will come to order. Please stand and join in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
See what's in the court. All right, the agenda.
Yes.
Anyone have any additions or to the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve agenda.
Okay.
Second.
Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes. We have minutes from the previous meeting.
I had found a typo the last time, but I think it's Char sent out the corrected ones. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just wanted to, and I don't know, I haven't seen it. I had a couple people call and ask about, I know it's not the official minutes, but on the video, there's a section that is missing. I haven't seen it, so I don't know. But I was just curious if there was a reason that a big portion of the video is missing.
I never watched it, so I've never seen it.
I never watch it because I'm here, but
Well,
Fred
there
mentioned it, yeah.
was a 30 or 40 minute break in the video from approximately, I don't have the exact minutes of it, but it broke from approximately 10 o'clock until we reconvened at 11. The thing, okay, for those of you that weren't here, we met last week from 9 until about 10:40 or so, and the gap then in our meeting was from approximately 10 o'clock until 10:40. And then we had approximately 20-minute recess, and then the airport people were here, and we met for another couple of hours, and that's on the video. We really don't know how it got shut off. We're very apologetic about it. We're trying to find out what happened, and any correction is necessary, while we'll get it made. The minutes of the meeting reflect, well, there was a lot of discussion involved with the auditor's position, and the official minutes of the meeting are simply the motion and the vote. And that's really all that's technically needed. The thing that I feel badly about is that Yvonne Krogstad's comments at the end got left off the video. I was going to go back and look at that video because she talked about, I think, 4 different things, and one of them I wanted to talk to her about, and then when we talked after the meeting, neither one of us could remember what it was, and so I was going to go back and look that up, and of course I couldn't do it. So I'm sorry about it, but it'll come up again if it was important, so yeah, okay.
Do we know what was left out of the, where in the discussion it cut out? What parts?
Well, it cut out,
I actually had Andy contact
Yeah.
Craig to see if he
I
could,
gave Andy the tape,
so, of what we are missing.
the voice file. I gave him the voice file, no video, just the voice file.
So you've got an audio of it or whatever?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
gave Andy.
Oh, okay.
So, and we need to just lay over, I think it just overlay that in the blank
Right,
spot where that was
yeah.
to fill the void? Is that what we're thinking?
That's what
by
Andy said,
possibility.
yeah.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure, that could be done.
Okay.
So do we need to talk to Andy about this? it?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You have.
I've talked to Andy about it. I think at least what I'm hearing
I
is
did
at
too.
least two other board members have talked to him about it, so.
So that's kind of the
It's being taken
consensus
care
that
of.
he will take care of it.
Yeah. Right.
Who normally turns it on and off?
I do.
You
Or
don't,
Andy if he's here.
okay. You don't,
We've had issues with it.
I know we had to turn it on this morning. There was a
I
problem.
have Andy up this morning because
Mhm.
that wasn't working.
It's electronics, it's man-made, it's not perfect.
okay.
But that still doesn't affect the actual approval of the written minutes, which is what we have before us.
We haven't voted yet.
Okay. Anything else? All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes approved. Public comment. Whoever went. Bruce, go ahead.
Age before beauty.
I'm not going to comment.
Morning, Commissioners. It's a great
morning.
day in Houston County because we're over $14,000 richer than we were several weeks ago. I got a notice from, I had made an inquiry to Ms. Berge of ADA about the repayment of the outstanding loan by Camp Winnebago, and she emailed me yesterday to say that we've been paid. Whoop-de-doo. That's good. Second point, I'd like to know about Wildcat Park. On your agenda, you're maybe discussing some petition about the closure of Wildcat. What's the deal?
Well, I had sent, I don't do, what's that stuff you do on the computer?
Facebook,
I don't do Facebook.
Oh,
But apparently, after we had a meeting discussing Wildcat, I went to have lunch, and there was a petition on the lunch counter, and then I guess Facebook exploded. We were talking about how to get a handle on expenses that we have incurred at Wildcat, and the revenue stream and how we might improve that. There's no plan to close Wildcat. It was.
thank you.
Yeah, is that all? Okay,
You got your answer right, Bruce.
Thank you.
okay. Brian?
Brian Van Gorp, Yucatan Township. I want to make an important issue public today. To my knowledge, there's been 7 attempts to file mining-related appeals to the Board of Adjustment in the last several years. 5 of those have been denied. 1 was heard, and 1 is in limbo. The first of the 4 appeals regarding the Erickson mine was denied by the Environmental Services Director. He has no authority to deny an appeal. If it had been heard, the Erickson CUP would never have been renewed because of the ongoing violations. All subsequent problems could have been avoided. We were lied to solely to prevent enforcement of the ordinance on mines. We should have gone to court at that time, but we were still naive as to our rights and as to how far the county would go to protect mines. The second one was heard. After appealing to the court, it was won. The third one was denied by the county attorney. The fourth one was denied by the zoning administrator. None of these people have the right to deny citizens due process. Currently, 5 citizens have attempted to file an appeal 3 times regarding the Schutz Quarry operated by Mr. Miners. The first 2 attempts were simply dismissed by the zoning administrator. This is not legal. He has no right to decide the fate of an appeal to the Board of Adjustment. The third attempt was filed via certified mail, and since there would now be a paper trail that would hurt the county in court, This filing was not denied, nor was it validated. It is in limbo. This is not justice. The whole thing, and this is the important part, the whole thing is an attempt to usurp the responsibility of the Board of Adjustment by certain individuals and thereby deny due process to the citizens of this county. What good is an ordinance and a legal system if people can simply be denied due process by an individual working in an agenda? If your current county attorney is not competent to give leadership on these issues, hire someone who is. Take responsibility. For 6 years, citizens have been trying to get the ordinance enforced in this county. The Board of Commissioners has done everything in its power to prevent that enforcement. Ultimately, all county employees report to you. It is your responsibility, and yours alone, to bring some discipline, transparency, and lawful behavior to these employees that are supposed to be working in the public interest. How long must we wait for you to do your jobs? We know it's possible because Fillmore County has done it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning.
Ken Shumper from La Crescent Township. I want to continue a little bit on what Brian said, but in a more general context. It's important to understand that everything about zoning in Houston County is in the Houston County zoning ordinance, okay? It's not in somebody's head. It's not in the zoning administrator's head. It's not in the county attorney's head. It's not in the head of the planning commission chairman or former planning commission members. It's in the zoning ordinance. And there's a reason for that. The reason is that it's the public's right to protect itself. And you can't know what zoning is going to do unless you can read it and reference it if you're a member of the public. The zoning ordinance tries to balance the interest between individual property rights and the public's right to protect its interests from what's going on in adjoining properties. Okay? That's the whole essence of a zoning ordinance. That's why we're so angry about some of the stuff that's gone on here for decades. Because the right of the public to protect itself has always been undermined by the people who are involved with enforcing and administering the zoning ordinance. Now, I hope you all understand that. You know, that's why we're angry about the fact that the zoning administrator wouldn't forward our request for a hearing before the Board of Adjustment. There's nothing in the zoning ordinance that gives him the discretion to deny us to have that hearing before the Board of Adjustment. And that is just one of many, many things that has gone on here for decades. Everything about zoning is in the zoning ordinance or is referenced in the zoning ordinance. And it's about time that people in this county, especially the 5 members of the county board, understand that. It's just as accessible to you as it is accessible to me and to everyone else in this county. That's the way the public has its chance to protect itself from undesirable land use activities by the fact that the zoning ordinance contains everything about zoning that can happen in this county. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I would just make one comment, and that's you stated a couple of times that this has gone on for decades. I haven't been here for decades.
I understand that.
And I have had numerous sit-downs with our current zoning official, and I'm happy with the way he's approaching things. It's not, he doesn't have a wand that's going to suddenly erase decades of your issues. Going forward, I'm confident that he is competent, and we'll leave it at that. Anyone else? Yvonne?
Yvonne Krogstad, Caledonia Township. Just in response to that, Mr. Chairman, the zoning administrator does not have the right to refuse an appeal. That's my only comment.
Thank you.
I'd like to state, I believe that this has been addressed. He sends out, he has given you reasons through emails that I've read of why. So it's not just that you are putting stuff out and he's never responding to you. I've seen the responses.
He doesn't have the right to make those responses. That's the point.
Doesn't have the discretion to deny us.
No, he doesn't. He is telling you the system, though. He is working with you on the system.
The system is the ordinance.
Is he emailing you back and forth and telling
No.
you? Have you seen any emails?
I have,
Anybody else
yeah.
seen any emails?
Well, I can speak for our 4 appeals, and we never got a single email. What we got was a letter saying we've been denied. That's it.
Okay.
Dig further.
All right. We're moving on. Shar?
I would ask that you adopt resolution 1748 regarding the voting equipment grant. I sent you information about that, which I believe is pretty self-explanatory.
Okay.
Any questions?
Anyone?
This is a grant that we have to apply for to get our equipment before next year's big election.
Correct.
But I'd make a motion to approve the Resolution 1748 for the application funding the voting equipment grant.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
The second resolution that I would like you to adopt has to do with allowing all different sizes of ballots during the election. ES&S is the company we buy our equipment from, and their new equipment that replaces the Automark, and the Automark is the big handicap voting equipment. We're having huge issues with them. They desperately need to be replaced, but the new equipment has not yet been certified by the state, and that is because current law does not allow for different size ballots. This prints actually not on a regular ballot like the Automark does. It prints on a smaller piece of paper. The cool thing about that piece of equipment is we never have to worry about running out of ballots. We've had occasions over the years. The last time we ran out of ballots, there was an issue. The printer goofed up the ballots, and one packet of a certain school district ballot only had like 2 ballots for that school, and the rest were in another school, and they ran out, which gets everybody scrambling. It's a real pain. This would alleviate that. It would also give us new equipment that would work for the handicapped people, where the old, like I said, is having huge issues. So I'd ask that you would adopt this resolution.
I'll move that we adopt Resolution 17-49.
I'll second it.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you, Shar.
You're welcome.
I don't see Rick. Oh, I do. Hiding back there.
Morning.
Good morning.
I sent in your packet a couple of things, and the one being an update on the Money Creek School demolition. As you are well aware, we did find the asbestos in there, and what I've done is actually had 2 or 3 different individuals or firms come down, take a look at the materials that were there, and confirm what's inside. From there, like I said, part of the contract we let out for the proposal that was accepted was the asbestos was they put in there for the inspection but not disposal, which has created a setback here, but it's also created a pretty good sized problem that I think we've now worked through. The one firm that I felt very comfortable with and could give us the total package, not only from the inspections, but also the doing the actual removal and the required manifestos I need to, and the lab work that I need, I felt comfortable with. They gave me a list price of an additional $7,500, which includes also the lining of containers and everything there so they can transport the material off-site. That being said, look, I contacted La Crosse and they were not interested in that material coming to them as they don't have enough area for that, or what area they've got before the winter months supply come in is they'd rather save, and they had actually asked us if we could find another place for that material. We have found that, another disposal area, but the distance is going to be additional to yet. I have worked through with the Van Gundys there as far as seeing that we've had a change in the proposal there on the location and what's going to be required of us. He also asked, he gave me a list or a price of what its additional cost to us. Going through that, I also indicated to him that there was a $1,500 fee he had put in there for an inspection that we would then exclude from his original bid. And he was agreeable to that. So what I gave you now is the total of what it's going to take us. His price being now down to, I think I have that in that proposal there.
46,100.
Yeah. And then you add the $7,500 for the asbestos removal, and the workers there that are going to take that, plus his additional costs of transporting that now to a different land disposal area. And that's what I guess I'm here to ask the board if you want me to proceed on this. I did have several calls down there from area residents of inquiring as why it's taken so long, but we've run into a few hurdles there, and I think, like I said, talking to all the necessary personnel there that are involved in this here, that we've come up with hopefully a solid price on what it's going to take to get rid of that school.
Well, with what you've just shared, does that go over what we were looking to potentially recoup
Yes.
by?
No.
Well, what we're looking at is, we've went through, and I think to reiterate, or go back a little bit, went through the courts, and the courts have given now the county the right, just because of the building being in an unsafe and a health hazard to the area. And I have at this time, no correspondence with the present owners of that they wanted to do anything different. They were down there when we were doing the asbestos inspections, but taking some of their personal belongings out of there that were in a little, that were in the garage there. At this point, like I said, with the 40, I think it's 44, I can't remember that. With Van Gundy's, you take the $1,500 off of that 46.1, I think we were down to 44, 44.6. And then add an additional $2,500 for their transportation. Mm-hmm. And then the actual $7,500 for the asbestos abatement.
We're roughly at 54,000, right, Rick?
Yeah.
And the lots were appraised at 60,000,
Yes.
30,000 apiece.
Land was appraised at 60,000 from the assessor's office, is what the value they have on those.
So
I guess
I would say, we're still under the appraised value of the land.
Yeah, that's what I'm most
I think that's
interested
what you're
in.
looking for, Jack.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. I guess we have little choice than to proceed. I don't know what else. Just a note, at our AMC district meeting, they went over some of the things that AMC is pressing the state to do, and one of them was to pick up this kind of cost that the counties have been bearing, but looking for state involvement to kind of alleviate pushing it onto the counties, but that's not obviously the way it is right now. But hopefully we don't have these issues very frequently, or hopefully never, but chances are we will. But so you need
I would, yes, what I
approval
need
to
is
go ahead.
approval from the board, if that's what you want to do, to proceed with.
I'd make a motion for Rick to proceed as he's doing.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion or questions?
No, but I just realized now that I did not call you back
Yeah.
from yesterday, so I apologize about
That's
that.
all right.
So,
No, I just kind of wanted to go through so you
Yeah.
kind of understood. I was getting some calls on it, and I was just wondering if, just to make sure we were both on the same
Yeah.
page there.
well, I had it, and you were my intention last night to call, and I was getting stuff ready for the week, and I totally spaced out on that one, so I apologize, Rick.
No problem.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Approved.
Thank you. The other thing I have is, we have a contract with Richard Sanitation that does all the transportation and hauling of the material from our drop sites. That contract that we have runs through 2023, but the thing is, there was clauses within the contract that stating at the end of 17, December 31st of 17, if both parties do agree, we can extend that additional years. The reason we did that is because the county was in negotiations with La Crosse County, and also there's such things as tipping fee increases and different programs that may from time to time come up. Like I said, that contract, we could place an addendum on that would just extend that service to the county to the year December 31st of 23 if both parties agree. And at this point, I've went over and had a discussion with Greg about that. He would like to see the contract extended to the year December 31st of 2023. And I guess he's given the county some good service. I've got no problem, with the past, these floodings and different things that we've had come up, and they have really served the county well. He's done, the firm has went above and beyond as far as helping us at those types of things, the unknowns. And like I said, I have no problem with the services or and they keep track of everything as far as the billings and everything. We've never had discrepancies on different things, so I would like to see the county at this point extend that or approve just extending the contract to the year 2023.
I'll make a motion to extend the contract to 2023 with Richard Sanitation.
Second.
Questions? Comments?
I'd just like to state, Rick also said that they would waive any 2018 increases
Yeah,
to get
thanks
this
for
done.
bringing- Yeah, thank you for that, I forgot that. Yeah, with the, when he had talked to me, he said at this point, he said he would forego any increase for the year 2018, and we'll leave the pricing as is for the year,
Okay,
so.
all right. All right, any other comments, question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Thanks, Rick.
Thank you.
Okay, Kevin Berg. And
Yes.
you've brought a couple of other gentlemen. Come on up.
You want us, we're okay right here? Or?
Well, come on up. Then we have microphones and... Good morning, and thank you for coming down. And
Yeah, well, thank you. Correct, my name's Kevin Berg, and I work in our La Crescent office for the Corps, and today we have Keith Rose from our real estate office in St. Paul. And we've had some of our real estate folks here at other meetings.
Okay,
And then Harry Kammer works for us on the Mist River here, but down at Blackhawk Park, so he's real familiar with Wildcat.
okay, very good. I guess I could start by saying we, excuse me, have a Wildcat committee, county that reviews various aspects of the operation and tries to make sound decisions in the county's interest. Being our landlord, we had some specific questions, I guess, that we felt needed to be addressed by the Corps. One in particular is some sites. Are there 9 of them, Jake?
Yes.
Yeah, that we would like to see become permanent sites if we could get your approval to do that. Can you be more specific, and do you know what we might be talking about?
Shard mentioned it to me briefly, I think on the phone, but I don't know the specifics again.
Yeah. Well, you want to explain a little in detail, Jake?
Well,
Or?
there's 9 sites along there, used to be permanent sites before the last 10 years. And you're talking about money-wise, now they get around $37,000 for the 25 we got there. And if you add the other 9 on there, you're talking $56,000 when they come in. And people want, and I know that, people coming off the highway need a place to stay. I probably had 3-4 calls this year. When they call from the station up there in Bredsback, where they park and that stuff.
The rest area up there?
Rest area, and there's plenty of room, but because we put them other 11 sites along there, and more than to take over around off the highway. Then they only stay one night when they come.
That's what, I guess one of our big questions, Kevin, is, how much, say, do we have in permanent sites? I mean, is there a percentage, something you'd like to see? Right now I think we have, 100 plus sites, correct? 102 or
75
something?
or 80.
Yeah, I think it's in the
Well, I'm
70s.
talking about the
Oh, that's,
sites too now.
I guess that's probably with the, okay. And we have 25 roughly permanent of those,
25 permanent right now there. Then you go up, it can go up to 35,
Yeah.
And then there's, I'd like to put 2 more sites where the shelter is there, that one shelter.
Right.
There's plenty of room for the 2 more sites to take off,
But-
put people on
Yeah.
the road there.
in rough numbers, it looks like we make about 75% of our money back
Right.
on 30% of the sites, So permanents do help us recoup a lot of what we're putting into this campsite.
And I would mention that improvements have been in the range of about 300,000, and that's what the county is looking at. How do we begin to recoup that kind of expenditure? And so the discretion to allow us to add those sites would be very helpful.
And just so I'm clear again, are these going to be additional sites newly built?
No,
2, yeah.
Oh, they're just
No.
getting, you're
just
transitioning them
transitioning them to
from
permanent.
daily to seasonal? Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, thank you for that.
Could we set a limit, like, as of now, give us the discretion to go up to 50/50?
Within the core, where seasonal sites are not allowed within our core managed areas. And the guidance has been to limit them even within out-granted areas, just because of the permanency of them. And, that's something that we could look at and discuss a little further. I don't know that we could tell you today for sure.
I guess you wouldn't necessarily even have to call them permanent, seasonal.
Seasonal, correct, but but they're occupied permanently by one party versus being available for the general public, for, you know, on a recurring basis during the season that you're open. We'd be willing to, we'd be willing to talk about that, and
Okay.
we have to talk internally a little bit.
Okay.
Out of curiosity, just maybe so we better understand, the Corps' position you said is that you don't allow for, you know, permanent or seasonal sites.
In our core managed areas, correct.
What, I'm just curious, what is the reason behind that? If somebody parked their camper there all the time and then pulled it out, or somebody new was in there every day, why is that the issue or whatever?
Well, the rationale, it's federal land and available for everybody, and not, you know, a specific party being able to stay at the site for the entire summer.
So you just want to divide it up some more?
Yeah,
Okay.
correct, yep. I mean, we have some guidance, you know, folks can stay at our sites for a certain period of time, but not a full season, so.
Yeah, we have a limit of 14 days in a 30-day period in core operated parks. But yeah, you get more visitation, or more individuals, you know, with transient sites. And that's kind of the idea, I believe, with it.
We can definitely see the economical difference the other way.
Yeah.
I mean, quite a bit.
No, we understand that, and you know, appreciate all of the county's been doing over the years there. It's a heavily used recreation area. And there's been some nice upgrades in recent years, some needed upgrades to infrastructure. So we're willing to discuss that, you know, go back and kind of take a look. Keith is kind of new with us in this, and go back and talk a little bit about that and see what we can do.
Okay.
He appreciated.
Yeah, I understand the fiscal end of it.
Right.
Yeah. And I guess from historically, the Corps really has had no interest in operating it.
Correct. Our policy is the Corps would not take it over to manage, from a recreation standpoint.
And I would just add, and I'm sure you're quite aware of this, but it's a great asset for the county, but it'd be a greater asset if we could recoup some, a little bit more revenue that balances off some of the expenditures. And
No, I understand.
yeah, which brings up another question. There's a boat launch there. All of the lacrosse boat launches now charge. I'm quite certain that they charge at Lawrence Lake, just up a couple of miles up. If we were to implement a charge, is that something that would have to be approved again by the Corps, or is that something we have?
Yeah, I think we'd like to just see what you are proposing, but we would be all open to that, because that's very common.
Yeah, and I'm not proposing.
Yeah.
We're
Just wanted to know what steps we
looking
have
at.
to take
Yeah.
if we were to go there.
I think just something, submittal to us requesting the changeover in X number of sites to seasonal, proposing a boat launch charge. I think in prior discussions over the years, we've even recommended that as potential revenue.
Oh, okay. I was not aware of that, but
because we recognize the day use, the transit use you get there, that isn't just campers.
No,
Right.
Yeah.
yeah.
I've had
Okay.
quite a few calls saying what a gem that particular site is for the county and for people all the way from St. Paul.
Sure.
Yesterday, I had a lengthy discussion, same thing that Jack just brought up, saying that he's very familiar with campgrounds up and down the river, and a lot of them charge like $20 annual fee or $3 a day. And he did propose that we should consider that, and I think that's why we're asking if we can do that. Because there's a lot of boats that go in and out there.
Yeah, I can always provide info of what the local area, some of the other areas do with their boat launch fees and what we do and stuff.
Oh, good.
Okay.
That wouldn't be a big deal for me to write something up and get it to Shar, so.
Sounds good.
Could could we ask you to do that right now and then
Yeah,
expect?
our parks now, last year we raised our boat launch fees to $5 a vehicle, or $5 a launch, or a $40 annual fee. And then there's another pass that works, which is a national park pass. That costs $80. That gets you free boat launch use for the season as well. And then we have a discount pass that seniors get, which once they purchase that card now for $80, they get boat launches for free for the rest of their life, as long as they display it.
Yeah.
So,
And I, I got to be honest. I don't like to see these fees, but when we get some of the feedback, sometimes is I had a discussion with a gentleman last night, a camper, and I used to have a boathouse by Lawrence Lake, and you get people that say, well, gee, why don't all of us get access to that shoreline? And that's been historically the way it's been. But when all the taxpayers are helping pay for Wildcat, I think it's incumbent upon us as officials to try to cover costs where and when we can. And when there is a cost to do something, I'm always in favor of user fees, and this would be a user fee. I mean, not everybody launches a boat, but if you do, it's going to cost you some money to do it.
Yes.
You touched on something. I was just curious. You said you started to say vehicle, and then you said launch. Most fees are based on, we'll call it the trailer, not necessarily the vehicle on it. So if you had twin jet skis, it's for the launch of both of them, not per jet ski, right?
Yeah, ours is per launch. The way we do it, they fill out an envelope, display it on their vehicle, and then launch. If they buy the annual pass, it is a pass that hangs off the mirror that is transferable to any vehicle, because there are quite a few people that have multiple boats, and so I believe City of La Crosse does a sticker on the trailer, and I know that got a few complaints with the initial when they first switched to that, but I don't know how that's going over now with them. And then Vernon County started charging at their launches right adjacent to our park, and I cannot remember their current fee. When they first started charging, we were still charging $3, and they matched us. So I don't know if they increased when we did, but they still see plenty of use there. I mean, it's still a popular launch. So.
Okay.
And we have the contact information, I'm sure, to, if we want to put anything in writing and send to them about future sites or anything.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I've saved the biggie for last. When we do future upgrades, and we have talked about a few things that we quote unquote would like to do, would the Corps ever consider helping pay for those? Or, and I know you have construction equipment and so forth, would that ever be in the cards?
Yeah, our budget is such that it's only, the budget we have to manage recreation on the Mississippi River can only be used for O&M facilities at the areas we specifically manage.
Okay.
In essence, that's why we out grant
Okay.
them. I wish we had a different avenue. I do, and I've actually asked that question recently of my boss. It's kind of new to our program here in our district. He's not new to the Corps program, but to our district. But that's pretty much how it's handled throughout the Corps.
Okay.
So we can provide our support and making some suggestions and things like that on maybe ways to get revenue, like at the boat ramp. But as far as O&M money to improve roads or things like that, we're at this point our hands are still tied on that.
Okay. I had to ask.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And I said, I wish it was a different, that we did have an avenue or some special funding. that could be made available. But our budget request, it's very specific to that. So.
Well, this new young man that you introduced, he'll push that through, I think.
might.
Yeah.
Leave it to those guys.
Okay.
I was just, back though, Jack, you mentioned about if the Corps would take it over and that, and we can't. I mean, that recreation is not something we're gonna get, the Corps would get back into unless it's kind of a very unique situation. Keith, do you want to speak a little bit to the disposal process? I mean, as far as if in fact the county ever did want to move forward with not out-granting it or managing it?
It's not going to be when I'm sitting here.
Okay. Well, from the real estate standpoint, there's kind of a set procedure, just so, and we may have talked about it some years back, but.
Well, and just to clarify, the meeting that created the petitions and everything, I think in general discussion, it was probably mentioned that, closing it would be an option, but it was never discussed that this would be our wish.
Okay.
It was simply that, if push came to shove and we were highly indebted and it looked like a stupid venture for us, we could close it and give it back to the Corps. We have no interest in doing that. It's a county asset, and we want to keep it that way, but we want to keep it that way as affordably as we can, I guess would be the best way to say it.
And that's good to hear. That's good to hear, because we like to see the county managing that.
Good. Do we have any other specific requests, or Jake, do you have anything that?
No, just that, I'd like to put them 2 sites in it, if we could, because people calling already for reservations for next year, and it'd be sure help if they had.
And those 2 sites are specifically where?
By the number 1 shelter, used to be where the playground equipment used to be. Now there's 11 sites in there right now, but there's room for 2 more. When you first go in,
Kevin, how would you like to see stuff like that handled? Make you a drawing, send it to you,
That'd
ask
be perfect, yep.
permission?
Yep, here's what we would like to do, and from what I remember, again, our guidance is, and I'll use the term guidance, is that we can work with you a little bit on that. We couldn't allow, and physically it's not possible if you add a whole new camping room somewhere, it just, and that would take some extra coordination. Mm-hmm. And I think we do have a master plan, and it's a little bit old for our Mississippi River Rec area, that even all the out-grant areas, that we have a layout of the campsites and where day use should be versus camping. And it's dated, but it's pretty usable yet, and with that guidance. So I guess what I'm saying is we'd like to see a little map, and I know it's just 2 sites, but
okay.
And see how that fits into the whole
we can do that
picture down there.
And then you will be discussing the 9 that we talked about earlier.
And just again, just communicate which those are.
Yep, same with a map type situation. We can explain where we're looking at.
Yep. No, that was good information. That clarified for me what you were talking. I wasn't sure if you're trying to fit an additional new 9 in or a change.
Say even updating, say we were going to overlay a road or put speed bumps in or anything else, we contact you with anything? That
would be great, yes. And generally what we do is we'll review it, and the real estate office in St. Paul is the actual author, and is who you have your binding agreement with. But us folks in the field will usually make a recommendation to them, and if you start it with us, then we can move on up the line.
Okay. All right.
It doesn't have to be anything overly technical. I mean, it's just something that kind of shows us what you want to do.
Sure.
Okay. Then that's good.
Anyone else? Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate you coming down.
Thank you. Thank you.
I also installed a traffic counter there this past year. That's something I can provide to you guys too, the visitation numbers, if that ever helps.
That'd be great.
That would be very helpful.
Yes. Do you do that yearly?
I actually check it monthly, and then I kind of gather the data yearly, and Right now, alls I have, our system's kind of new, so alls I have is the raw count numbers of how many vehicles go by. But eventually they will get like a formula out there to figure out how many people individually, not just vehicles.
Right.
But yeah, that's something I can start providing.
Yeah, it'd be
you guys
nice to get on
at
your
a
list,
seasonal level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At
That'd be
least,
great.
so.
All right, thanks again.
Thanks, Brian.
Are we supposed to have
Public hearing's at 10.
Aaron here?
Yep.
Okay, we'll have to,
I'm sure he'll be here.
why don't we have a public hearing at 10. Why don't we skip down? Carol? Carol, you want to go now?
Well, I have Bruce Kimmel coming.
Oh, okay.
Do action items.
Pardon?
Action items?
Yeah. We'll skip down to the action items until Aaron gets here. Okay, we got approved claims, human services, license center disbursements. Everybody's reviewed.
I'll make a motion to approve claims.
I'll second.
Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Authorize Sheriff's Department to apply for Arlen Bulk Grant.
I'll make a motion to approve the Arlen bulk grant application.
Second.
Questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Adopt Resolution 17-50 approving lawful gambling for Gopher State Sportsman's Club.
I move that we adopt that resolution.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Approve/sign Selco contract for 2018-19-20, reviewed and approved by county attorney.
I'll make a motion to approve the Selco contract for the next 3 years.
Okay. And we discussed that at some length in the previous meeting, so.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And I see Aaron is here, so, but we have 5 more minutes, so. We'll go to the consent agenda. Notice of public hearing scheduled for 11/28 on local water plan. Correspondence and payroll regarding change in employment status for John Puglisa. Petition to not close Wildcat Landing and Campground. I've never seen the petition.
It was on our packet.
Was it in the packet?
Yeah,
I
it
didn't
was.
pay any attention. Okay. And correspondence from Minnesota DNR regarding the sale of 2 parcels of land. So these are all items to be placed on file.
In regards to the petition portion of it, I would just say too that I'm glad to see that there's that many people concerned and dedicated towards Wildcat Park. But I think we kind of clarified that I don't think it's any of the board's intentions to close it. So just obviously setting the record straight that thank you for petitioning not closing it, but we have no intentions of closing it.
And I think we missed the number 5 on there, Jack,
The tons delivered.
on the consent
Oh,
agenda.
you don't have the updated one here.
Oh,
And number 5, tons delivered to
I had the
Excel
wrong.
during
Yeah.
October
Tons
2017.
delivered to Excel during October 2017. And I happen to, I see the head of the La Crosse landfill has resigned. Is that, you're on that committee?
They appointed a new person to
So-
take his place, so.
So we have no issues in terms
No,
of?
it does not affect our contracts or services.
Okay. So So we'll add to the consent.
That
as it-
was Mr. Koch? Is
Yeah.
that what that
Yes.
was?
Mhm.
He did an excellent job.
Yeah, I was gonna say, sad
Yeah.
to see him go, but good for him for retiring. And
So I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. You're still waiting, Carol, so why don't we just take a 4-minute
Yeah.
pause here?
That's fine. Yeah.
That'll use the restroom.
There you go.
Call IT.
Yeah. He had a turn. What did he
Just
do?
on,
How
just
did he
on
do
one,
it?
I don't know because I was busy.
Yeah.
I didn't pay any attention. It's tech stuff and I didn't bother with it. But
I know. Well, mine, I just found if I held my finger on it, it said rotate. So I did do that.
I had it fixed on the page that was up, but the next page I went to, it wasn't fixed. So I got to
Also, make sure you remind him to move crates.
Yeah, Fred again. We've got a problem with this iPad. You know, the nice young man was up here and fixed it so it was right side up on the page that it was on. And then I went to a different page and it's sideways again.
It's just, it'll be what it'll be.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
What do we have here?
Just talked to him, he said he can get a copy. And insert it. And I didn't go any further into anything at that point. I know.
Again? How you doing?
Oh, thank
Yeah.
I know. I think there's a lot of frustration. That's not the way to
Yeah.
handle it.
So should notice.
I know that, and I know that,
Yeah.
because I did talk to him about this, but I didn't want to run it the meeting. That's not a place.
Oh, no. But there are, there's a couple of other things
Yeah.
Okay.
Because of the letter.
Yeah. I know. I keep telling everything about any professional state. I know.
It's just like triaging. This one's not gonna die, so let's help.
We adjourn the meeting, a recess, open the public hearing, and
Right.
then,
Yeah.
yeah. And where, do you know where that sign-in sheet is at?
Right. Right.
Oh, here it is.
Okay.
Good,
That's just it,
thanks.
yeah. Thanks, Sam.
All right, we have to, okay, folks, we're at 10 o'clock, so we need a motion to recess this portion.
Move to recess this portion of the meeting and, yeah, that's all I gotta do with it. Yeah.
Sir,
Then
Open the
Is there a
public
second?
Yeah, I'll second to recess.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we will then open the public hearing. proposed zoning ordinance amendment. Good morning, Aaron.
Commissioners. Morning. So today I'm bringing you two amendments to the zoning ordinance. The Planning Commission has looked at both of these proposed changes during their August and September meetings, and they've recommended adoption. The county has noticed in the newspapers and provided notification to townships and cities as required. The language has also been made available on the county website and in the zoning office. Should you adopt today, a 4/5 vote is required. In your packets and then passed out here this morning are the two sections that we're looking at today. The first would be the changes to the Board of Adjustment section. The changes proposed here are minimal, and what they're doing is they're reacting to change in state law on the findings required to grant a variance. If you turn in your Board of Adjustment section to page 71, it shows what the prior findings that were required were, and that what the new standards would be. So we could just go over those, and I think that's the substance of what we're looking at here today for the change. So previously there was a requirement that there's not a substantial variation in relation to the standard, and that is being changed to that the variance request is in harmony with the intent and purpose of the official controls. Previously, the requirement was, or the question, I guess, to be answered that was the findings was, will the variance have a negative effect on governmental services? In this case, it will be there are practical difficulties in complying with the official controls, and the proposed use of the property is reasonable. Economic considerations alone do not constitute practical difficulties. Previous finding required was, will the variance affect a substantial change in the character of the neighborhood, or will there be a substantial detriment to neighboring properties? The updated standard is, the variance request is due to special considerations or circumstances unique to the property and not created by the property owner. And I should say that these changes are not necessarily in the same order as they used to be. So number 3 doesn't necessarily replace the old number 3.
Is there an easy example you could cite for this last one? Special conditions or circumstances unique to the property and not created by the property owner? The example that the land use attorneys who provide training always cite for the second portion of this, not created by the property owner, is that a property owner can't install a swimming pool in a location and then the following year ask for a variance for the placement of a garage because the swimming pool is in the place where the garage could have went. But it's really the Board of Adjustment has to exercise discretion in how they view this. It comes down to, do they think that somebody did something in order to facilitate a future variance or not? So if it looks like you were setting the table to allow yourself to get a variance in the future, then perhaps they might be less likely to grant that variance than if it looks like somebody built a shed, say 20 years ago, and it was 2 property owners ago. Then it might be more likely that they would see that as not being done with the intent of creating the rationale to grant a variance. Okay.
The first half of that there, the special circumstances, in our case here in Houston County, it's often floodplain related or steep slopes or bluffs or things of that nature that make it harder to cite things back a certain distance.
Okay, thank you.
The previous standard was that can the practical difficulty be alleviated by a feasible method other than a variance? The newer standard is the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality nor substantially impair property values or the public health, safety, or welfare in the vicinity. Previous standard, how did the practical difficulty occur? Did the landowner create a need for the variance? So now you're seeing how we touched on it earlier with the newer one. The new standard would be the variance cannot be alleviated by a reasonable method other than a variance, and the minimum variance which would alleviate the practical difficulty is sought. Previous standard, in light of all the above factors, will allowing a variance serve the interests of justice? And the new standard, the request is not a use variance and shall not have the effect of allowing any use that is not allowed in the zoning district, permit a lower degree of flood protection than the regulatory flood protection elevation, or permit standards lower than those required by state law. So taken all together, the old standards and the new standards have a lot of overlap, a lot of same effect. It's just the state laws were changed a little bit, so we have been going through actually both sets of standards and granting our variances. Should you adopt today, we will no longer have to go over our old standards. We'll just use the newer standards. The other changes in this section are actually on page 70 right before, and it's essentially the same thing written out in paragraph form rather than numbered out. And we just removed the old and added the new, and that's just word for word copy of the statutory language that we're required to use. Any questions?
Anyone?
No, it was just a clarifying it to agree with the state and the, right.
Yeah, right. They changed the requirements a little bit, and we're just reacting to that.
Okay. So do you need a motion to approve the?
Not yet, we don't,
Not
no.
yet.
And I don't know how we want to handle this. We could do them separately, or we could do them together.
We usually approve them after we go back into regular session.
Okay,
Not during
yeah, I
regular
do
session.
remember that, yes. Okay.
Char, would it make sense to cover the other section too, and then
Yes,
open up for
and
comment?
then open up.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay.
The other section we're looking at today is the riparian buffer standards. This is not a revision of an existing section. This will be a new section in the ordinance. The language that's being proposed here today has been approved by the Board of Soil and Water Resources and satisfies the requirements of Minnesota Statute 103F.48. Based on comments received after the Planning Commission recommendation from Bowser, there have been minor revisions that have occurred to the draft here, and we're going to cover every one of those changes here this morning. First, the section number was changed from section 24 to section 37, and I guess I'll cover 1 and 2 here at the same time. And the ordinance title was changed from riparian buffer district to riparian buffer standards. And the reason the numbers changed is because when it was considered a district, it was placed in the ordinance at the end of the districts, and if we're not considering a district, it simply goes to the end of the ordinance.
Right.
Makes our numbering easier. The district language was based in large part on a recommendation from Soil and Water, River Soil and Water, that came in after the Planning Commission hearing. But it makes sense, I think, to have it as standards rather than create a new district.
Okay.
If you turn to page 334, also I should say in the packets you have here, the changes that have been made since the Planning Commission recommendation are all tracked. So you can see on page 334, we've got striped language and we've got inserted language. So this is language regarding grandfathered or non-conforming uses and how that's been modified. The model ordinance that Bowser set forth use the grandfather term. Our ordinance uses the non-conforming uses term. So we changed that to reflect, to be consistent in what we're calling it's either non-conforming or it's grandfather. We call it non-conforming, so we want that language to be consistent. This language says that non-conforming uses do not apply to the buffer law, and that's a requirement of Bowser in order to be eligible for funding. If we flip to page 336, you see that there's some language that's been struck in there. That again was the county attempting to maybe build in some flexibility in the administration of this program, and then Bowser recommended removing it. They didn't say that it certainly wouldn't satisfy it, but they said that it may not satisfy it. So the way that it's proposed today would mean that your $0 administrative penalty order would be for the date the administrative penalty order is issued and 11 months up to there. We can't add an alternative timeline at our discretion. The last change is on page 337, and it's just clarifying the statute of limitations language. And again, this is a change that was made to the draft ordinance that came out, and we had presented it as was written. They subsequently made a change to make it consistent. The sentence that's being struck in says that the APO has to be undertaken within 3 years. The following sentence that cites statute says 2 years. So this corrects that error, I guess is a way to say it. Any questions on any of those changes or on the text as a whole?
I got, this is minor, but it's eating away at me, so I got to bring it up. Page 332, 37.4, buffer requirements. This language seems odd. So it calls out, and I get what they're trying to do, but it just seems kind of weird and cumbersome. For water shown a buffer protection map requiring 50-foot width, the buffer width 50-foot average, 30-foot minimum as provided Minnesota Statute 103-48, subdivision 3, and measured according to subsection 34 or 37.4, subdivision 2. It's referencing itself.
Yeah.
And I get what they're saying, but it just seems like that's kind of a redundant factor, that it's saying measure at 50 foot and then go back and reference subdivision 34 to measure at 50 foot. Does that, and it's in both of them, does that even need to be there? And the only reason why I ask is the first time that I read that, I was like, okay, it's measured according to subdivision 37.4. Okay, they must tell you there, okay, it's from the center line, from the stream out. And I'm like, wait a second, no. That's just going back to itself. So it's kind of like, in your brain, you're saying it's measured according to, meaning there should be some directions on how to do it. But here it's just telling you, hey, measure it to 50 foot. And then go back and reference that you measured it to 50 foot. Does that make sense?
No, I think what it's doing actually, though, it does, and I apologize for the amount of page turning that reading through this requires.
Yeah, no problem.
I think what's happening here, though, is the number one is for public water, a creek or a river.
Yep.
And that's the 50, and then number 2 is for like a public drainage ditch, which we don't have here in Houston County, but that's saying that it's not 50 feet, it's 16 and a half. So it's either one of those. We don't necessarily need number 2 at all right now, but something like that, I guess, could theoretically be installed. And if it were, then now we have the language now.
So explain to me, what does that mean then? Because So that first, under number 1, it says 50 foot, average 30, yada, yada, okay, Minnesota statute. It says, and as measured according to 37-4 subdivision 2, and for water showing. So, okay, so I get that one's referencing number 2.
16.
Yeah, it's referencing that, okay. But now,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
but now on number 2, it's also referencing the 16 and a half. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Does
that's-
that really need to be there?
I don't think it does, actually, now that you point that out.
Because I get why number 1 is referencing that number 2, but number 2 is referencing itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think we could, just looking at it right now.
Yeah, and I mean, you can review that, but that was just the one thing that caught my eye. I was like, it's kind of confusing that, why is it, I don't know.
Well, when it references itself, you're already assuming that you read something wrong. You end up
That's right.
going back to
That's
it.
right. And I guess that's what I did, because I was like, okay, what did I miss here?
Yep.
And then, so I'm just saying, just for the ease of the reader, it's not like it's a major thing, but just
On the language that a motion might be made on this morning, that could be struck in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, anytime we do this, it's all contingent on Bowser's reapproving.
Yeah.
But I think that your read of that seems correct to me.
Yeah.
It's redundant and nonsensical.
Now you just brought something up. So then whatever action happens here goes to Bowser for their approval, and then does it come back to the board for a final, like, yep, Bowser approved it, this is good, or?
Unless, I suppose if Bowser approved it with X and X changes, it would come back to us.
Oh, I see.
What you're looking at today has been approved. So if this is approved by the board, statute requires us to send it back up to Bowser, but they've already reviewed it.
Okay.
With a change like one we just made, they would
get-
have to review it, and it's possible they would say, no, we like that, and you have to
Okay.
put it back in, but I don't expect that to be the case.
Okay, so just so I understand, this has been approved by Bowser, so if we approve it, it's fine, with the exception that we're suggesting something, then that might come back. Is that?
Yeah, I think it's very unlikely it would come back based on that edit. It's really if you try to do something.
Substantive, where you
Right,
change.
some of
yeah.
the changes where we tried to build in flexibility
Yeah.
and timelines, they said, no,
Yeah.
you can't do that. But this is I think a referencing error on their
Okay.
part, probably.
We can't change it to 25 feet from 50.
No, you can't do that.
Something like that.
Good catch. Other questions or comments?
Just one. Aaron, in this, there's a lot of discussion in this document about enforcement and how much of a problem or how much of the enforcement part of it do you expect to have to deal with realistically? You got any feel for that? I mean, I'm hearing that we already have over 90% compliance.
That's statewide, and I think that our county numbers are similar. I know that as of last week, we had 25 parcels that were either that needed review or that were non-compliant that had not signed up for a waiver. You could sign up for a waiver to extend the deadline. So that enforcement piece you might just be pushing that date out in a lot of cases because the waivers have a deadline of their own. But right now, for the November 1st date, maximum number of enforcement cases would be 25, and I think that 80% of those needed to be reviewed. So that would be assuming that they would all be non-compliant upon review, and many of those were out of state landowners who are simply hard to get a hold of, as I understand it.
Yeah. Well, I'm assuming that a lot of those waiver requests are weather-related this year.
Right, yes, and those we're no longer accepting, or Soil and Water is no longer accepting those, but you could still apply for a waiver or a cost share if you want to do CRP or have them assist you in some way to put in a buffer that qualifies.
Well, our 90, some of us were at a meeting in Faribault last week, and one of the things that was talked about was the buffer thing, and the counties that talked about it, they were also 90% compliant already, so, yeah.
So I guess if I were to speculate, I hope that we won't be doing a lot of enforcement on this. We have some options in here. We have the APO option and the normal civil or criminal option that we have in the zoning ordinance to enforce. And it's a periodic thing. Something could be in compliance for several seasons and then, taken out. And, then you would have to go and address that. But our hope is that it's more of a carrot enforcement mechanism than a stick.
Yeah, and Soil and Water does the looking at things, and then they tell us if there's a problem. And
Correct. The county doesn't act until Soil and Water certifies something as non-compliant.
Yeah.
And then the procedure that is outlined in here kicks in for us.
In relation to that, Aaron, I saw in the Sunday lacrosse paper the ad for position with Houston County in your office, but I don't recall what's the goal to have that new person on board.
When would that occur? Our goal is January 1.
January 1,
yeah.
Which would be a huge help.
Yes. Yep.
So. Okay.
There's a couple other things not related to these two, but related to the ordinance that I want to cover before the public comment. The formatting you're seeing in these drafts is a simplified version of what is in the ordinance currently. For instance, at the beginning of the buffer ordinance, we see a 37.1. Under the current format that's used, that would be 0110.3701. The 0110 is throughout the ordinance. It doesn't change. It doesn't seem to serve any purpose that I can tell. And in addition, it's not compatible with multi-layer lists. If I wanted to make a revision to the ordinance under the current scheme, it essentially has to be manually renumbered by and large, because of that format is not something that Microsoft can do. What I'm proposing here is eliminating the first 4 digits and then using a dot in place of the 0. That's something that the software can handle, so it can automatically do that. I think it simplifies it for everyone. I don't believe that this constitutes an amendment and that it doesn't change the substance of the ordinance at all, but I wanted to make you aware that that's the direction I'm headed.
I think it's easier to read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, do you just remember what one you're looking for?
Right. Is it a 001?
Just given that the length of the ordinance, the manual renumbering is a large waster of time.
Okay.
And it's very prone to error, and then you get it all done and you make one change and
Start all
everything
over.
after there has to be changed again.
The computer won't just change it by one number.
Right.
You gotta redo them all.
It doesn't make any sense to try to do it in a manual way. Secondly, the shoreline ordinance is currently being revised. We've had one planning commission meeting on it. We've set it aside so that we could focus on the buffer, because the November 1 date, and that had a lot more of the cross-referencing of sections within it that's very time-consuming to get that all straightened out and make sure it's accurate. But there's overlap in the shoreline and in the buffer, so that in part is why it needs to be updated. If these two proposals today are approved, we would post on the website an updated ordinance, but we would hold off on the printing of new ordinances until I brought the shoreline, and it was either approved or denied. I would hope to do that by the end of the year, and at that time we would renumber the whole ordinance in this scheme, and we would reprint updated ordinances. We would also make the updated version without the shoreline available in a hard copy. If someone wanted to come and just get this section, they certainly could from our office, but we wouldn't print off new books for you all and all the planning commission until we aren't expecting another revision in the near future.
Right. Makes sense.
That's all I have.
All right. Well, it's a public hearing. Is there anybody that wants to weigh in?
You've got a sign-up sheet.
Oh. We got Mr. Jumper.
I think Bruce would like to.
Bruce would like to go first.
Nobody come up front, or-
Sure,
Yes.
yeah, we have a microphone
mic,
up
yeah.
here, so.
Thank you, Commissioners. I like what Aaron is proposing with regard to the manual change of,
Bruce, could you please pull a mic over?
this way?
Yep.
Just
Yeah,
pull a
so
mic,
that it's-
it'll go.
Right in front of you.
Thank you.
I really do like what the zoning commissioner is proposing with regard to the manual changes of the numeration of the provisions of the ordinance. I'm really tired of 0110. I think that's a great idea. And brings me to another point. I would really like to see the ordinance in each section, or at an addendum at the beginning, or a notation at the end, I don't know where you would like to put it, but that for every amended change in the ordinance, that it's reflected in the ordinance. So for instance, with the Board of Adjustment section, is it 13 now? Is it called section 13?
Board of Adjustment, no, section 12.
It's 12?
Yeah.
12, yes, okay. So we've made several changes to the Board of Adjustment section over the last 6 years or whatever it was. I would like to see that reflected in the actual document, that changes were made in 2009, 2010,
Well,
or
like-
whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like they do in the statutes.
We do that too, like with engineering, you got your revisions that you have to keep track of,
Yeah,
so you know what was changed when,
yeah.
so that you could reference it back. Like, I get what you're saying now. Yeah,
Not that we have to have.
you don't have to have it written out,
You
but
don't
just
have to
say
have it
that,
written out,
that
but that
section
we know
12
that there
something
were
was
changes
changed in
made.
2016.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Would that be a big deal? Or when we could start this year, start with this?
Well, Aaron, I guess that brings a question. Do we keep record, like when we change of what the old one was, if we have to go back to refer?
They're all recorded documents, so
Yeah.
you can go to the recorder's office and get a copy of every ordinance that was ever enacted.
Okay.
But to accomplish, it would take much more work to
Yeah.
determine what's been changed.
You want to hire me?
I'm sorry, I may have misunderstood me. It wouldn't take, in the current format, if you wanted to know what sections have been changed and when, you would have to cross-reference all the previous sections. So
Yeah,
that
to
would be a
see
lot
what
of
it was.
work.
Is there any way though, moving forward, that you could, like even now, I get like when you get time or something happens, we could always go back and do this as a project, but from this date moving forward, since we know what was changed, to be able to do that and just have a running record in the back, and the only reason why I ask it is because even like when I've looked through the ordinance in the past, you'll question something and be like, well, why isn't it this? And then somebody will say, well, like, for instance, like Rick Frank, who's been here for a while, he would say, well, yeah, that was changed in, 1986. Well, how do I know that there was a change? So I get what Bruce is saying, having a record that, yeah, this has been changed. I don't know. I mean, it's a good point.
I don't see any reason why we couldn't come up with a system to do that. I don't know what, I'm not prepared right now to say, yes, we can do it in this way.
Well, I mean, just
We
to
can
look
certainly
into
look at
it,
it,
but-
and I think we could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But my point would be, it would not require an amendment, as Aaron was referring to the numeration of the sections.
Just for record that it has been altered at some point. If you want to
Yeah.
look it up, you know that it was changed
Why-
in
yeah, what it was-
2015. So go to the
Right.
recorder's office and look up the ordinance in 2015. You can cross-reference it yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
Right, the whole
Yeah.
change
Okay.
wouldn't have to be
No,
listed, just that there was.
Yeah,
Just that it
section
was.
of
That
date
there
on
was a
it.
change in 2009, 2013.
Okay. Sure. Aaron
Thank
will-
you, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Either Brian or Ken.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Ken Jumper, La Crescent Township. I have 4 points to make in regards to the amendment dealing with Board of Adjustment. I assume you have what I have here, a two-page thing dealing available to you. On the part 12.5 criteria for granting a variance, I want to inform you that in many municipalities and even in some counties, the elected board, whether it's a county board or a city council or whatever, has the right to review decisions by the Board of Adjustment. And I would encourage you to think about that in amending our ordinance to do that. I, for one, really resent the fact that appointed people are making gigantic decisions, and elected officials don't have any right to review those decisions. And I'm thinking specifically this issue with the feedlot on south of Houston, where two Board of Adjustment members made a decision that has entangled the county in a lawsuit, a really questionable decision. And had you had the same power that, for example, I believe Olmsted County has and several cities have, where you could have, as elected officials, reviewed that decision by the Board of Adjustment, the outcome might have been quite differently. So I'm simply using this opportunity to bring that to your attention. Secondly, I'm having watched zoning for 40 years in this county. I'm convinced that 90% of the variances that are granted every year are granted in violation of the criteria listed here under 12.5. And I want to refer specifically to the item where it says the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner. And the variance, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the locality. Economic considerations alone do not constitute a practical difficulty. If you buy a piece of land, a farm, where you anticipate putting a feedlot, and the first thing you come in and do is request a variance because the feedlot is too close to an just existing property, you're the one who's created that circumstances, not the property. And yet, time and again, we've seen variances granted for that type of thing in Houston County. This criteria is not understood by the people on the Board of Adjustment, and it is not followed, and they do not get adequate guidance from our county attorney. I'm absolutely convinced of that, and if you don't believe me, go to a couple Board of Adjustment meetings and apply those criteria. Third point I wish to make is 12.4, which is a page back. Actually, it's right above 12.5. Number 1, right above 12.5, it talks about any aggrieved person can, who wants to appeal an administrative ruling or something like that, official provisions of this ordinance, as amended, shall have the right to appeal to the Board of Adjustment. This is a continuation of what I said in my earlier comments this morning. We have a right to appeal to the Board of Adjustment. It's not a discretionary thing for the zoning administrator to say we can do that or can't do that. We have a right to appeal, and our appeal should have been processed and a public hearing should have been set up. And the fourth point I want to make is if you go back to section 4 in this zoning ordinance right now today, it describes the duties of the zoning administrator. Subdivision 4, and I'm going to read it to you, the zoning administrator shall receive and forward all applications for variances and petitions for other matters to the Board of Adjustment. It doesn't say the zoning administrator has discretion to do that or not do that. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Does it say that he has to do that on the day that you ask him to?
Well, you know, I mean, that's just kind of deflection on your part, Mr. Chairman.
Well, no, it isn't. It's
we've been in there since August. This is
okay.
November. We've been requesting that, you know, and the first version,
I guess I would compare it to triaging. You know, this guy's not going to die, so let's work on this one. Okay, he's a one-man office at this point. I just pointed out on January 1st he'll have somebody else working with him. I don't think it's been willing. I don't think he's purposely said, I'm not going to deal with this. Those people can keep asking, I'm not going to deal with it. I think what he's doing is dealing with priorities. And
it can't take more than a half an hour to set up a public hearing with the Board of Adjustment. He's got a secretary who can do the paperwork and get it published in the newspaper.
Well, I'm not gonna
Well, and I'm
debate.
not gonna buy your argument, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman. You can say water runs uphill, but that doesn't make it so.
All right.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Brian?
I would like to say, just in regard to your comment, Jack, justice delayed is justice denied. There's a reason why things are supposed to be done in a timely way. But I wanted to kind of go along with some of the same ideas that Ken had presented there, and that is that practical difficulties, as used in connection with granting a variance, means that it's not created by the landowner, and it's not an economic issue. Now, I've sat in on some of these Board of Adjustment meetings, and I don't know for sure the percentage of variances that succeed, but it's very high. Almost always do they get passed. And so that tells me there's a problem. And I think it's a problem of assertiveness and having the will to say no to some things. When, whatever, say 80 or 90% of the variances are passed, that's a problem. And so it doesn't really matter what's written in the ordinance if it's not enforced. And we all know that the ordinance has not been enforced in this county. And it doesn't matter what's written regarding the Board of Adjustment if they're just going to pass every variance that comes along. So there has to be some willpower here to enforce things and apply the law as written and say no to every good old boy that comes along. And I haven't seen it in this county, and I've been watching close for 6 years.
I do have a question, Aaron, on, I guess, Mr. Jumper's, thank you, Brian, Mr. Jumper's comment about the exclusive power to order the issuance of variances. Is it simply a motion of the board that would give us the authority to overrule the Board of Adjustment, or is that quite frankly, I'm not familiar if that's a state statute or?
I think it is. I guess I'm not prepared to answer that question. I know there's different rules for cities and counties.
Okay.
And I
Is
know
that something you could research?
Sure.
Please? I'd be interested. Anyone else? I guess we don't have anyone else on the sheet, so I would, if there are no questions for Aaron, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll move that we close public hearing.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Closed? We will. Do we need a motion to?
We can just have that then to reconvene in open session.
Okay. We will now reconvene the regular meeting. And I think we'll go back up to Carol. Oh, I'm sorry, Aaron. Did you have more?
We have to move on these.
Oh, we have to. You'd like a, I'm sorry.
Motions,
Yeah, we haven't, all your work and we haven't said, okay, we'll go with it.
Just going to brush them off.
Yeah. So is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the updates of the zoning ordinance on these two sections, Section 12 and Section 37.
Does there need to be a notation made at this point on that one change?
With the one change, yes.
The 37.4
Yeah.
subdivision 2.
Repeating itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Oh, I would just make a comment too on part of this buffer and shoreline. That I was with Aaron in Mankato last week for 8 hours of this from state people. You'd be better off being a computer listening to it than a person. So it gave me a real appreciation of the complexity of these issues that Aaron has to deal with, because you just don't say, yeah, that's fine, we'll go with that. It's this, and that. And very
Appreciate
complicated.
saying that these trainings are periodic, so if the remainder of you ever wish to avail yourselves of 8 hours of being talked to a computer,
Yeah,
let me know.
go for it.
Well, I had planned on going, and I'm sorry I missed it. I'll try to.
It was interesting. I'm not saying it wasn't interesting, but it was more than I could ever take in one day. But again, thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, Carol.
When I set up the appointment for the board meeting, it was to find out the direction you are wanting to go in regards to the 2018 budget. We adopted the preliminary budget at the end of September. October seems to have passed very quickly, and we're into November. We have weeks that there aren't meetings. So I want to know how you want to have it, the approach you want to take. We have a couple positions that were requested and not addressed in the preliminary budget. Do we want to have the personnel committee deal with those? And you're going to discuss the county coordinator. Should that be done through the personnel committee? Do you want me to schedule appointments with the individual departments, or do you want to come before the full board? Do you want to set a committee of a couple commissioners like we've done in past years to just do some reviews also? So that was my question for today's meeting regarding the 2018 budget.
That's one question.
Yes. No, I said questions.
Help. If you got a second one, I don't want to hear it.
Didn't I put an S on the end of that? Those are my questions.
This is silent S.
Silent S, yes, they're silent, because I went to school in Freeburg. So if there could, just maybe be some direction for and let me know so I can set things up or take a look at that. The second thing I had requested was approval of a credit card for John Puglisa, the new Human Services Director. I have not received his signed acknowledgement, so if the board would approve that pending his signing of the acknowledgement, that way we could get it in the works, because there isn't a board meeting next week. So that would be what I would ask on that.
Okay. Well, why don't we work backward, and anybody have an issue with a credit card for John?
Do you need a motion to that effect? I'll make a motion to approve the credit card for John on receipt of his acknowledgement.
Second.
Questions or discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Now, for your other multifaceted question, what is the drop-dead date?
We will need to adopt our final levy and budget at the meeting on December 26th. So we do have time, but I don't want it to come to be the week before that meeting and say, well, maybe we should have looked at that.
Right.
So just
Understand
keep
that.
that in mind.
Well, a lot of this will depend on, we're in the midst of negotiations with numerous unions. How that shakes out, obviously, have quite an impact. Tess, are we getting cooperation, and maybe that's the wrong word, but are we meshing with the unions in terms of getting these meetings when we need them? And
We have several meetings scheduled, and we have a closed session on the agenda.
today, yeah.
To answer, we have meetings scheduled, but we didn't, yes.
Yeah. Right. Your other part about various department meetings, you said in the past it's been a couple of the personnel committee primarily, or?
Well, the Personnel Committee would meet regarding the positions. There was an increase in an FTE for the Veteran Service Office, and I know we discussed, well, maybe extension should be, but nothing has really happened with it.
Right.
And then the sheriff also requested like it would equate to more like a temporary position to help with some clerical work, and the funding would come from permit to carry funds. But it still has to be addressed by the board because it wasn't included with the preliminary budget that you adopted.
Okay.
And that should probably be addressed by the Personnel Committee with a recommendation to the board.
Yeah. I would say that next meeting, and if Justin is available, we'll get together with Tess and review those thoroughly, and we'll make a decision by the next meeting.
Okay.
That we can bring to the board.
And the discussion regarding the county coordinator would also affect the budget, so that, you know,
Right.
something that would come up.
Okay.
And that led into the fact that we do have a bond levy of approximately $1.4 million. The bonds that we have currently are scheduled to be paid off in 2030. We've looked at opportunities for refunding or refinancing, as I like to more look at it, in the past, but have waited because we may possibly have needed to bond for the highway department construction if our funds were invested to a point where we couldn't access them right away. But there is some developments in that area, and we should probably address the refinancing or refunding if we're going to do that. Bruce Kimmel is here. He is with Ehlers. I always say Ehlers. Ehlers and Associates to walk you through that and the advantages that it would bring. I printed copies of the information that he's going to go over, but he had already printed it on bigger sheets, so it's bigger type, so I'm going to actually give you those.
It's always great.
Makes it a little easier.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you.
Thank you, Carol, and thanks, commissioners, for having me down.
Thank you.
Thanks also for good weather. I had some colleagues traveling around northwestern Minnesota last night in freezing rain and snow, and I was glad to have your roads this morning down this way. So
Sure.
it's been a couple of years since I've been here to talk about the county's debt profile and pros and cons of issuing new debt and refunding your existing debt. As Carol mentioned, we've been in contact every few months or so about where the bond market is at and opportunities for saving the county money on future debt levies. And you have these two jail bonds, you'll recall, from 2009 and 2010 are by far your largest existing obligations. And those bonds are callable in February of 2020 and 2021 respectively, so about 2 to 3 years from now, because it's almost 2018, hard to believe. And you know, you've had an emerging opportunity to save money. I'm a little bit maybe conservative on the spectrum of when to pull the trigger on refundings, because it's sort of a one-shot deal. Once you pull the trigger on an advance refunding on a tax-exempt basis, you can't do it again. And so we've talked and decided, well, let's let the wheels turn a little bit longer. Let's see if you have a new money situation where you need to bond for another project. But last week, when the House Republicans released their tax reform proposal, as you're aware, one of the provisions that caught us all in the bond market off guard was the fact that they're proposing to do away with the ability to do advance refundings altogether, as well as some other pretty big changes to the muni bond market. And so that sort of made me think, well, what about Houston County? Because you certainly could wait with these bonds to the year 2020 or 2021 to do current refundings, and the tax proposal isn't proposing to do away with current refundings. But my concern was that what if bond rates continue to go up over the next 2 to 3 years, and your opportunity to lock in future savings for the county evaporates in the meantime. Also, I should note, as you have heard in the news, all of this is up for grabs. There are lobbyists galore that are pounding on congressmen and senators on all the tax provisions. And so it's anyone's guess as to whether this particular elimination of advance refundings will actually go through. But given that you have a solid opportunity in front of you, and given that there is this threat of you losing your opportunity to do an advance refunding, I called Carol on yesterday, and said, you know, if it works, could I come down and just see what the board might want to do? We do have time left to get this refunding done in 2017 and thereby avoid any potential elimination that way. But this isn't a life or death situation. You know, you have good financial management, you're handling your existing debt levy. While we do think there are savings here, and we recommend pulling the trigger on this at this time, you know, I can't tell you that this is the only shot you've got to lock in savings. So let me walk through this information, see what questions you have. I'll try to go relatively quickly through this and what the game plan might be, and then see what you think. And then if you want to go forward, I'll be looking for a motion authorizing us to work with Carol and with Shar and her team to move forward on this. So on the handout, I want to direct your attention first to the side that says Houston County Debt Profile Actual. This is information very similar to what I reviewed with you back, I think, in the fall of 2015. And you can see you have 4 debt obligations that are currently outstanding. The one that's represented in maroon is about to pay off. You have 1 more year, basically, on the 2009B CIP bonds. That relates to your 2018 levy year, so your upcoming budget year would pay off those bonds with a final payment in February of 19. And so we're not proposing to do anything there. You'll just let that run its course. The green bonds are your 2009C jail bonds. This is one of the 2 bond issues that we're looking at refunding. And you can see how that goes out to the 2029 fiscal year, right? And those bonds have a call date, as we call it, in 2020, and we'd be looking to refinance those bonds in advance of that call date. And you can see the bond rates aren't bad. The existing bond rates that are remaining range from 3 to 4%, but we can certainly do better with this refinancing. The purple bonds, you just have a little bit left on. Those bonds will be callable in 2019. Those are the 2010A CIP bonds. We're not proposing to do anything relative to those bonds with this bond issue. That said, you would have the ability to do a current refunding potentially a year from now on that bond and pick up some savings in the future. So stay tuned on that.
Okay.
Yes.
I somehow feel like I'm back in Faribault here, but
yeah.
you point out the purple.
Right.
Call in 2019, but then purple continues in 20 and 21 on the chart.
Right. So you have an option of prepaying or refinancing those bonds as of February of 19. But then you still have bonds that are due in 2021 and 22. So there's still 3 years left on that bond schedule. So the call date, as we call it, is just your option for early prepayment or refinancing.
Refinance, okay.
Yep.
And he said that we wouldn't call those bonds.
Not at this time.
We'd leave those like
right. So the ones we're really looking at tackling here, and I just wanted to give you sort of the existing lay of the land, are what I'm calling the green bonds, which are your 2009C bonds, which did the first half of the jail project, and then what are the blue bonds on top, and that's the 2010B bonds that finance the rest of the jail project. And you can see those bonds go 1 year longer. The last year sort of wraps around the end so that your overall debt levy stays at roughly 1.4 million. And then you can see that after the 2030 budget year, you have no debt. So you're thinking ahead to what you want to do with fiscal management, capital projects. It's just worth knowing that you have a very flat debt profile, and then it's done after the year 2030. But I included some
I'm just
information.
thinking how happy I'll be in 2030.
Yeah, exactly. I'll bring a cake. I'll still be here. So.
Yeah. Make it a soft cake. No.
So let me
flip over then to the estimated page, and this reflects some of the information that's in the second packet that Carol handed out. And so what we tried to do here is to show the estimated debt service as it relates to the 2009 C and 2010 B bonds if you did move forward with this refunding. And long story short, if you just look at sort of the numbers on the middle of the page, you can see that in most years we're estimating you'd be able to knock off about $85,000 off of your debt levy. So not huge money, but it adds up. And in total, if you look at existing debt service that you're obligated to pay to the estimated new debt service, net, we're looking at about $800,000 of total savings. And that's net of all fees, all costs of issuance, et cetera. So it's truly an apples to apples comparison of prospective new debt service to the existing debt service. And it's about $800,000 in aggregate. Now I should point out that there are a number of ways we could have tackled this bond issue. Your existing 2009 C and 2010 B bonds, they add up to about $12 million. And as you might recall, there's a provision in federal law that says if you issue less than $10 million in a year, you can be what's called bank qualified, which gets you an even better interest rate than you would normally. And so after running the numbers a number of different ways, it's our recommendation that you go with the approach that keeps your total issuance just under $10 million. And so we're looking at a bond issue amount of about $9,980,000 that would take care of all of the 2010 B bonds. So the blue bonds would be totally refinanced, and then most of the green bonds, the 2009 C bonds. And that was, in other words, to keep the total bond issue under $10 million, which we think positions you best to maximize your savings on this refinancing. So then just really quickly, if I can draw your attention to the bullet points on the upper right-hand portion. Again, we designed this proposal to maximize your interest cost savings, keeping that total amount under $10 million. It would refinance 100% of the 2010 bonds and about 70% of the 2009 bonds. You would still have the ability to refinance the rest of those 2009 bonds at a later date. And if the tax reform bill does eliminate tax-exempt advance refundings, again, you'd still be able to do those current refundings.
Okay, that raises a question. You know what we could save refinancing now.
Right.
And we could lose the ability to do it if this tax reform goes through. If it doesn't, what's your best guess on, what would we save potentially doing it a few years later?
Yeah. So this sort of gets down in the weeds a little bit, but one of the things we look at when we decide whether or not it makes sense to move forward is, when you do these advance refundings, what you're doing is you're essentially parking money in an escrow account waiting for those call dates to happen, right? So the existing bondholders, they know they can count on having their existing bonds until 2020, 2021, but you're wanting to lock in your new interest rates now when interest rates are low. And so what happens is you end up investing the refunding bonds in a bank account for the next 2 years. And typically you can't invest that escrow, as we call it, at the same interest rate as the bond rate. It's a little bit lower. And so there's some inefficiency there. And we try to measure how much inefficiency there is, because if it's really inefficient, then we're going to say don't do it, even though it's saving you money, it's just losing too much money during that waiting period. Right now, there's only about $100,000 of inefficiency, and that seems like a lot, but on a $10 million bond issue, that's actually fairly nominal. And so based on that, and based on the fact that we think interest rates will keep going up, that's why we're here with this recommendation. If interest rates stayed the same, if they did not go up, and if Congress doesn't eliminate advance refundings, then yes, you would be better off waiting another 6 months or a year or 18 months. But that's a roll of the dice, right?
Right, and you can't give us a an exact figure on what we'd gain?
Well, I can give you an estimate, just doing a little bit of quick bond math. If you waited a year, we're thinking you would save about 800 grand. If you waited a year and could be assured of getting the same interest rates, you'd save probably about another $50,000.
Oh. I don't know, I kind of like the bird in the hand myself, but I don't know what the board.
Well, from anything I'm seeing, there is going to be some increases, or very good potential of future increases within the next year.
Yeah.
We've had some movement in some major indices that are, unless something else changes, which always can happen, but.
Yeah, commissioners, you're absolutely right. We are seeing rates generally go up. The bond market's a little different in that whenever there's any bad news, bond rates go back down. So anytime there's a blow up about North Korea or about the European economy or something, people flock to the safety of municipal bonds, which helps keep interest rates down, which is good for you, not good for investors. But yes, in general, given how well the stock market continues to do, and given that it's been so many years with rock bottom historic low interest rates, most people are thinking it's a matter of time before interest rates start going back up, at least somewhere close to historical norms. So with that, I know I probably gave you more detail than you wanted, but advance refundings are kind of complicated. Let me draw your attention to this draft schedule. So if you are wanting to move forward in capturing that bird in hand, as Commissioner Miller put it, we're here today to go over this proposed structure. If you give us the go-ahead on this particular approach, we would start working with staff and with the auditor's office on sort of the behind-the-scenes work. We would prepare an official pre-sale report that I'd probably just ask to be part of your packet at the next meeting, just sort of on consent, just so that you have it. But we wouldn't need any additional action to move forward with the process. We would then look to distribute the official statement probably right before Thanksgiving to the market, look to have the rating call with Standard & Poor's the week after Thanksgiving, and that would give us enough time for the market to digest this upcoming offering before we would take bids, most likely on Monday the 11th of December, and I would come back to you the morning of the 12th for the award to the winning bidder. This would be a competitive bond approach. It's been a number of years since the county has sold bonds, but you've done very well by putting out your bond issues to the overall market. You have a strong credit rating, and we wouldn't see that changing. So in the market right now is very hungry for new supply. There just isn't enough supply to meet demand. So with that, if the bond sale went forward and if we met our savings objectives, we would look then to close the bonds on or around December 28th, just in the nick of time, and have those closed as of 2017. I did include just a couple other pages from the estimates, and again, these are just estimates on what the interest rates would be. I should just point out that we are looking at an overall total interest rate, or TIC as we call it, of about 2.36% for this bond issue going out through February of 2031. So that just sort of indicates where rates are still being very low. And you can see on the back page, the final page, in the right-hand column, the total savings. These numbers are just debt service to debt service. So you can see these savings are about $75,000 to $80,000. As you recall, your levy is 105% of that, and so that's why the levy numbers that I showed you before are a little bit higher. So are there any other questions about sort of how this refunding would work or the savings it might achieve for the county?
Anyone?
Makes sense to save some money.
Well, just looking at your schedule here, are you suggesting that we sit on this for a week, or because if county board directs refunding to proceed, you're saying if we do it today?
I'm sorry, if you do it today, yes, I should have. That was not clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's board's?
Carol, what are your thoughts?
I would probably do this at this point. You know, we have put it off, we've looked at it before, and not knowing what's going to happen down the road. I can't see interest rates going down like they have, you know, they have before.
Yeah, they've
They'll
been-
go up with the Fed raising the rate.
Low for a long
And there
stretch
is,
here.
you know, like you said, there is a demand right now.
I agree.
Yeah, I spoke with
I agree.
Carol
Me
earlier.
too.
I should also just point out, if we don't achieve, state law requires at least 3% savings. We're over double that. We're at about 6.7% right now in estimated savings. But there is sort of a safety valve that if for some reason the market blows up, we can just pull the plug and say, we're not doing it. So you're not signing on the dotted line.
Okay.
And I would be coming back to you, well, probably at AMC saying, hey guys, this isn't working. Let's pull the ripcord and we'll try again another time. But if things still look good, then you know, we would look to stay on track for early December.
Okay.
Yeah, this is just starting the process, and we don't actually sign on the dotted line until sometime in December. I can't remember the date. Yeah. What's the proper motion required at this point?
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I would just recommend that you direct county staff to work with others to proceed with the refunding of the 2009 C and 2010 B bonds.
Okay, so moved.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, proceed. Thank you. Thanks, Carol.
Thank you very
St.
much
Cloud,
for
right?
staying alert and advising us of the opportunity.
Well, thank you. It's always nice to, if you can save money, let's go ahead and do it and lock that in.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Thank you. Tess.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
At this time, I'd like to alter my agenda and move the information technology, the number 3 bullet on your list, to the top of your list, please. So, don't know if everybody here has met Luke Coons. Am I saying it correctly? I apologize for that. But this is Luke. He has been with us for nearly a year now. He is in the IT department. His position is IT support technician. When we send a help notice in, it gets triaged, and Luke is one of obviously 3 in the department that may be responding to that notice. And the department head, director here, is recommending, as well as our office, Luke's change of status from probationary employee to regular. Do you want to make a comment?
Sure. I'll say too much good stuff because he's sitting right here, but no, he's been doing great. Hit the ground running, and we're lucky to have him. I don't know if you remember, we had 3 searches for this position, so we got someone who works well and works in the team, and we're getting a lot done. So it's been good.
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments?
When did you say you were going to get this thing fixed?
Immediately.
Good answer.
Yeah, good answer. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Well, welcome after a year. Yeah. Welcome to full time.
Director Mary Marshall is not with us this morning. She asked that she and I met on the agenda, and I'd like to go through that with you. The first thing is to there, that's better. The first thing is to approve the non-union appointed and elected wage grid as amended. What you'll see here, the only change is down here on the nurses scale. And we added a new wage band to reflect the lead position. So with that, commissioners, I request that you consider that.
I'll make a motion to approve the revised public health nurse wage grid.
Second.
Questions? Discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you very much. Next is accept the resignation of Marcia Bauer as the home care coordinator. I've noted there that this was banded as a C5-1 position. It was a supervisory position, and this position has now gone away with the closure of the home care program. And so accept her resignation and appoint her as staff nurse, which is C4-2, at step 9, effective November 13th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
I would just mention that Teresa and I met in committee this morning with Mary and explained the details of the change. So,
Yes.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
We'd like to thank Marcia for her service
As a coordinator.
as a coordinator.
yes.
How many years was that? She was
Well, she's been the coordinator since August of 2013. And she did a fine job.
Yeah, she has.
We had an internal posting then. The bit of reorganization, if you will, in public health with the closure of the program found we no longer needed a supervisor position. However, we do need a lead nurse as there's nursing staff that continues to work with the populations they serve. So we respectfully request you to approve the appointment of Nurse Michelle Schulte as a probationary long-term care lead nurse. This is C43, step 7, effective November 13th, 2017. That is the line that you just approved there. The step 7 represents the county's practice upon promotion is 3% or the next step, whichever is greater to effectuate a minimum of 3%. So I said that a little backwards, but the next step or 3%, whichever is greater. And so that's why the step 7. We're also asking that a condition of this appointment ongoing is her successful completion of a BSN, Bachelor of Science in Nursing, within 2 years of the date of this appointment, which she would then have the public health certificate. She's been a nurse with the county as an RN for quite a period of time. I didn't look up the years. But she comes with Director Marshall's and my recommendation for change of appointment status at this time.
I'll make a motion for the appointment of Michelle Schulte as long-term care lead nurse.
Second.
Questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay.
And that does result in a net financial savings to the county. and yet provides the appropriate leadership going forward. Lastly, on the staffing agenda is a request to approve a monthly mobile computing device stipend of $50 for Greg Olson, who is the maintenance foreman. Greg currently receives the cell phone stipend. However, he is connected to the county and all of our electronic monitoring of our HVAC systems through his phone as well, and he uses that, not just the phone, but he uses the computing device daily. And so it's appropriate that he is compensated.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. All right.
Thank you very much. At this time, I request to close the meeting pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D03, Subdivision 1B, to discuss strategy for labor negotiations.
I would propose about a 5-minute
Yes.
recess before we close the meeting. Is that agreeable?
I need a break, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's recess for 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Motion to reconvene the regular meeting.
Motion to reconvene.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Because they did, they dragged their heels. Well, you might have screwed yourself this way.
Okay, we'll move on.
You need to make a statement what you discussed in your closed meeting, and just very quickly, the board met in closed session pursuant to MinStat 13D03 Subdivision 1B and had general discussions regarding strategies for labor negotiations.
Okay, thank you, Tess. Commissioner reports and comments.
Someone will be there shortly, Tess.
Start. Yeah, where are we?
Yeah, thanks.
Which room?
I think right across the hall. Right across the hall? Okay.
I have a handout here for you. I need to get to the bottom of the pile. There we are. This is the Minnesota Water Resources Board budget that we got at the last meeting. And I just felt that commissioners all ought to see it. You'll have some idea of what we deal with and what that group deals with. And I'm not going to comment further on it. If you have questions about it, why ask me or email me or ask it at the next meeting or whatever when it's already noon, why it's time to bail. Several of us attended the AMC meeting at Faribault, and I'll let anybody else talk about that that wants to. The Extension Committee, well, I've gotten involved as a member of the Extension Committee in the Extension organizations, the 4-H part of the Extension organizations, basically dealing with what they want to do as a 4-H organization in this county going forward. And I've been at 2 meetings with probably 8 people at each meeting talking about this, and then there were 4 other meetings with various focus groups. There was a report given to the Federation meeting Sunday evening, and we'll see what comes out of all of that. But I respect that organization so much for really taking a serious amount of time and effort to figure out what they can do to help the 4-H age students in their area of responsibility. They really do take it seriously, and they really do work at it. I have one comment about restructuring. Every one of these away from the county meetings that I go to, I sort of get needled a bit by somebody from some other county that we have not done really anything with a serious reorganization, restructuring of county government. And I've got a report here that I'm not going to try to dig out right now from one of the state agencies that says that almost all of the counties in the state have, over the last, I don't know how many years, but it's quite a few, done some fairly serious reorganization, restructuring.
So do we think that
Whether
Fillmore
that
has?
just a second, whether that simply involves a coordinator, administrator, or whether it involves combining some areas or whatever, but in any event, almost all the counties in the state have done some serious work in that area. So we're headed in the right direction. It's just that we're maybe a little bit late getting there, but okay, end of my comment. Okay, Scott, I'm sorry.
Do you know, has Fillmore County done any major restructuring at all?
Pardon me?
You know, have you talked to Fillmore? Have they done any major restructuring?
They do have a coordinator.
They had a coordinator, and then they did something, and they combined.
I believe
couple
that
of
they,
offices.
Auditor,
Char would know
treasurers.
this. Did they combine auditor treasurer a while back?
That's been combined, yes.
Yeah.
In fact, the same lady is all three right now. I spoke to her at our meeting.
Auditor, treasurer, recorder, what do you mean by all three?
She's coordinator, auditor, and treasurer.
Oh, Bobby is?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
She's probably fully occupied.
Yeah. Yeah, she had to tell me quickly because she was busy.
I'm done.
I'm not going to take a lot of time either, even though I had a whole thing on the AMC district meeting, which was always interesting, and you learn a lot just hearing other counties and what they're doing and what they're working on. So, but we can go into that at a later.
I would just mention that when we met this morning in our committee, it came up about the veterans home at that district meeting. Dwayne Bakke from Fillmore was talking about how it's become a dollar competitive issue, and our veteran service officer thinks this part of the state definitely needs some housing
Yeah.
for veterans, and therefore, if it's okay with the board, would like to initiate some discussion with Dwayne in terms of what we might do to make their bid more attractive. Right now, there's some county, which I'm sorry, I jotted it down, but I don't have it with me.
I know.
But they have about a $6 million cash.
Beltrami was one, and the other
Yeah.
one was up by.
Good? No, it wasn't
Wasn't
Goodhue.
Goodhue, no.
Do you remember that discussion, though?
Yeah. He's
that-
brought
Yeah,
that up
a
at
little
each
bit,
one of our
yeah.
district
Yeah.
meetings, looking.
So anyway, if
Yeah.
it's, I think maybe a discussion with Dwayne would be in order to.
I think so.
See.
Yeah.
Great. Anything else, Teresa?
I went to the Historical Society annual meeting on Sunday to represent the county, and they were very grateful for what they do, but they did have a report on the jail reading study that they're really pushing for, one of the three ideas that I think Scott brought up last time, because you went to that committee. Because they think that if we don't do something, if we just get rid of the jail, we'll lose our legacy money and our grants that way, because it's combined with this courthouse too. So that was kind of interesting. They're all behind a reuse of it. So, and those were my two main meetings I had last week. I would talk more on the district because it was interesting, and we did get a lot of notes
Yeah.
of things that we could do. There's also a salary study on the AMC website she told us about that we could look at to see how we do compare our different offices.
I would just mention too, that meeting in Faribault was
Yeah,
quite a facility.
yeah.
I had never heard of Shattuck St. Mary's, but man, it's impressive. So,
Expensive,
yeah, 49,000 a year.
yeah. And it's high school.
Yeah. Okay.
And middle school.
Well, and middle school, but even 49,000.
I've talked with Dave Walters has been talking to me, and I don't know
Yeah,
if
he
he's
called me too.
talked to other commissioners or not, from Soil and Water. You know, we basically took funding from them when we gave it to Rick, to the zoning, to do a part-time person for the feedlots and stuff. So basically, he lost funding. What he is asking is if we would do a 14,000 grant, that he can get a $14,000 grant match if we up our budget by 14,000 to him.
On Monday, I met with that group again, and the basic message that I got then, oh no, it wasn't Monday, it was last week, Thursday, yeah, okay. But anyway, the basic message that I got and from Dave was that he felt, and he and Rick was there, and they both felt that give them a little time and they'll get this worked out. And they'll present us with, together, will present us with something that was going to be workable.
Okay, he called me about the matching grant from the state.
Yeah, he asked me if, actually, I mean, from my discussion, I got from him that would I present it, that they're, that they're asking for it, so.
And he wanted me to get him on the agenda. Did you talk to him at all, Shark?
I have him scheduled.
I believe,
You
yeah.
do have it scheduled,
He's
okay.
scheduled, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I made sure of that,
Yep.
so, okay.
You did actually talk about all of this at
Yes.
the budget meeting.
Yes, he did.
Right,
Yeah.
yep.
So basically.
He's just
looking
bringing
for
it
an
back
answer.
again.
It was initially a $20,000, wasn't it? And if we gave them that, they would get that match from the state. But now it ended up, the final number was $14,400.
Yeah.
Sent an email and I forwarded that all to you.
Yep.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's probably a discussion that should be part of the budget.
Right, I mean,
and, you know,
he did present it at his budget, we just never, we'd have listed this all we did. That should have been added to your list? That should have been added to your list for us.
Didn't I say appropriation?
Well, that's pretty vague.
You probably did, but you said several other things too.
And, you know, and the thing is, if they're not doing our feedlot work, and if they're not doing the buffer enforcement work, and if they're not doing that portion of it, do we just increase their appropriation to cover what they lost, or are they going to have to look at their staffing and say, we don't have that work now?
I mean, basically, what I'm getting out of it is that we were paying for feedlots at 25,000, wasn't all going to feedlots.
Right, yeah, because why would you need it then, right?
Right, because if we just took away what you're just paying for, you still break even,
Right, that's right.
you know. so.
Good point.
Stay tuned.
Something where, you know, it's not just because there's this match that they get this money, it's like.
Right, and you could go on forever matching grants.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So just, you know, keep that in mind in these discussions and.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm done.
I got a list here. I'll try and make it quick. One thing is the talk about the Board of Adjustment, whether we had final say. I found on the Minnesota statutes, and I emailed it to Aaron. And Aaron has since emailed all of us. So
Felt something going?
yeah. And what it was is in statute 394-27 subdivision 9, it just says that all Board of Adjustment decisions shall be final. Anyway, I emailed it to Aaron. Aaron's given us all his response. So we got that. With that discussion, at some point, not necessarily today, hopefully maybe sometime in the future, we had talked last year when we were going through hiring for the Board of Adjustment, we had talked about expanding that to 5-person.
Right.
And I would like to have some discussion, whether it's now or at the next meeting or something, maybe
I
proceeding
think
with that.
Put that on discussion for next week.
Yeah,
No,
because
good.
I think that will resolve a lot of those issues as being a final say board. Because the issue that I've heard the most is, well, you just buddy up and then we'll just get it passed through. So at least I think with 5 people, it will it'll help calm that side of it.
That's the whole idea of
Yeah.
5, sure.
So anyway, that I'd like to bring up. The other thing is the Wildcat debt portion that we were talking about. Obviously, debt is bad, but we worked for improvements and talking to the Army Corps of Engineers, seeing how we could increase profits. With that being said, I guess just moving forward, I'd like to see, instead of spending money, and I'm guilty of this in my own personal life, spending money and figuring out how to pay for it, looking more down the road of how do we increase or make it more efficient and try and save up a little bit of money and make those improvements, because it seems like we've made a lot of improvements, now we're in debt. Now we got to figure out how do we pay for it. If the Corps doesn't let us go to some of these permanent sites and do that, it kind of tightens down the screws a little bit. And so anyway, it was more or less just, when going forward, if there's some improvements, maybe wait until we can pay for half of it up front, or find out that we definitely have a revenue source to pay for it before we get too big. Because I know there's some improvements we want to do out there that I think are good.
Right.
But I just want to get too far in debt where we can't catch up.
I think us on the committee and Ken are thinking the same thing, and that's why this whole thing got brought up. Is we know there's more improvements, but until we can see some more profits, that it's going the right way.
And Carol, didn't we talked about somehow I don't know, mischaracterize it, but the county does the work and then the county bills the work. We're paying them to be here with a regular, and then we're paying them, and that skews it.
Right, the highway department levies a certain amount, or it includes in their budget a certain amount that they're going to get paid for doing projects, say for the airport, for Wildcat.
Townships?
Yeah, that's different. I'm talking about county projects.
Oh, okay.
Just the county part. Okay, so then we budget over here in our departments as an expenditure. The skew comes in when, like last year, they billed us, $75,000 for their employees' time, and that's just, I don't know that that's the exact number. But they had only budgeted revenue of $10,000. So for those salaries of those employees, they levied that difference. But we paid it to them, so they got it twice. They levied for it, and then we paid it.
If they levied 10,000, they should only get 65,000.
But we need to have that transaction to reflect the actual cost of our assets so that we can track our assets. So we need to figure out some way to actually make that.
Yeah. So we're not doubling the numbers on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That we do have to remember when we say 300,000, that a lot of that was already budgeted money, or I'll say 10,000 of it was, or whatever. Some of the government, some of our employees' money or pay went into that 300,000.
Right. Well, I'm thinking it was 70-some.
Yeah. So which is not the same as putting $75,000.
Well, technically, if we would have contracted for it, it probably would have cost us more, because really our employees are only billed at cost, where if you have a company who's doing it, they're probably going to charge an hourly rate that's higher than what we bill back through highway.
All right, Justin.
So anyway, that was that, and then the last thing I just wanted to talk about, just to make sure that we're kind of all on the same page here. Last week, it was brought to my attention that people were going down to the license center, and when they were waiting in line, employees were telling them that if you're not happy with your wait, you should contact the 3 commissioners that voted against filling Michelle's position. I guess I wanted to have some discussion on that. I don't feel that was an accurate reflection of the case of what took place or what happened. The license center's got the same amount of employees that we've had. We have a system that's not working good from the state. We have 2 very green employees that are down there. So those are a lot of the reasons why. I will definitely stand behind my decision on why I voted the way I did, but I just felt that that is, oh boy, how do you say, not accurately reflecting the situation at hand, and
So who's
somewhat
telling us to say
deceiving
this?
people from the public.
People in the license department?
As far as I understand it.
Employees, you're saying, or?
Mhm.
Is that correct, Shar, that one
It's
of
my
the...
understanding that they were asked about it and they gave some information out. I guess I can ask more about it.
Was there a printed handout?
I will check and see.
Okay, because I think you had commented that Jack on numerous occasions had said that we only need one employee there.
We're cross-training Larissa into the auditor's
Okay,
office, so a
but-
lot of times now there's only one employee.
Okay, but let me just clarify that this Jack never said that. What I said was that when there is nobody in the license center, no customers, or one customer, I could not understand why one of the other people couldn't be doing something else. But then I was told that it was, well, we'll put one there and we'll show you, Jack, that one can handle it, which I hope that wasn't the case.
No.
Okay.
But I just wanted to bring that up, just because I guess, politics is politics. And I understand, Shar being an elected official, we're elected officials, I get that. The issue that I have is when politics start to interfere with doing good work, or we've seen it even at the federal level when politics starts to turn a little muddy as far as what is the real underlying factor, and now false rumors are being spread as to why. So I guess I just wanted to bring that up, that I was just disappointed that it would be handled in such a manner, and wanted to make sure that everybody knew what was going on and what the actual reasons for some of the waits are. So that's what I had.
I received an email from a gentleman who had to wait a bit, and he was upset by the fact that a county employee took on-the-clock time to basically pan three commissioners. That's what it amounted to, I suppose. And this particular individual was very supportive of the concept that we are trying to find ways to become more efficient. And yeah, becoming more efficient. Now this is my editorial comment. Yeah, becoming more efficient means change, and sometimes change is at best uncomfortable, and sometimes it does work, at least temporarily, to the disadvantage of individuals. And it's not fun.
And I would address just one other point there. And I had a discussion with one of the ladies that she's not, she's in the auditor's office, but not in the License Bureau full-time, about lines, and was told that the commissioners don't want any lines. That may have been at some point. I don't have any issue with it. I explained. You go to the doctor, do you walk right in? I don't. I go to Social Security and they give me a number and I sit down. My daughter applied for a new car not license, what do you get that you own the car?
Registration.
Registration. State told her her license said 10 weeks. So waiting is not, a life-threatening issue. I mean, you wait many places. I wait in the grocery line. So to say that we can't ever have a line when it's a busy day, people have to understand the state system's not working, okay?
And they still don't have the silly thing fixed.
No, so anyway, I'm not sympathetic to that issue. I don't know any place in the state where you'd probably walk in right now and get taken care of immediately. Everybody's got the same system they're struggling with. Other than that, are you done, Justin? Because I talked about the Mankato meeting, and I went from that meeting to the seated dinner in Stewartville, and actually Carol and her husband were there, and Donna and her husband were there. Unfortunately, I had gotten up at 4:30 in order to catch the ride to Mankato with the other people. So after the dinner and a couple of talks and then the main speaker, I said, Carol, I can either embarrass myself by leaving early or I can embarrass myself by falling asleep here. So I left early, but we got to talk to the head man, Ron, is it? Yeah. And plugged Courtney, and he was more than understanding that we appreciate Courtney. And as you may see, she's back from her honeymoon and raring to go. And I think has been doing an outstanding job. Last night I had a meeting at Hiawatha Valley Mental Health in Winona, and we toured the new building that they are moving into, which is on Sarnia. It used to be a clinic for Winona Health. Quite a building. It needs quite a bit of work in order to accommodate them, but discussed what was discussed again at the district meeting about trying to work out a triage center for the area where if somebody is in some kind of distress, is it jail, is it the hospital, is it mental health? And Hiawatha Valley is on top of that thing, that they're growing because the need is growing. So that was a good meeting. Other than that, I think we've covered just about everything that needs to be covered. Public comment?
No, we got discussion.
Well, Jack, there's
I'm sorry, we have discussion of the coordinator position.
There's one thing that none of the three of us talked about that came up at the meeting in Faribault, and that is the proposed levy increases by the other counties in the area. And they ranged from, I think the lowest one other than ours, if I remember right, was 3, and the highest one was 10.
3.7 was the lowest next to us, up to 10. Moore County was at 10% for their preliminary.
However, in some previous years, we've been in the higher raise bracket. So
well, and I get a kick
it
out
does tend to even out a bit, but
when I get a kick out of the 1 year, Winona was at 17 and ended up at 0. You know, so I mean, it's funny how some set it really high. You know, like,
well, what some of the people said was, well, I think one county, I think it was the 10% county, if I remember right, said, well, we set it at 14, but we're going to wind up probably about 10 or something. No, that's what they were doing. They were giving us those kinds of numbers.
Sure.
All right. Discuss county coordinator position.
Okay, so I wanted this on here, and I guess I'll lead it off. For right now, the discussion I guess I wanted to kind of have with the board is more of an informal, not necessarily a let's vote on this right now type of a discussion, but getting some of the reasons why maybe we should be going down this avenue, what we feel this would benefit, why is this something that we should be going, leaning towards for this kind of a model. What I would like to do is just kind of have some discussion, see where the board is at. I had talked to the director of AMC for the last couple of years, and she kind of given me some points and stuff to ponder. I was going to get in contact with her one more time. The other thing is I talked to Mary Marshall and John Puglisa, being from Beltrami County, having experience with being at a county with an administrator. Wanted to see kind of their take, or maybe have them come to the board if we've got some kind of questions from people that have been in the trenches and worked under an administrator. So that's kind of maybe for a future meeting. This one, I guess I kind of want to discuss with the board, some of the reasons why we should be going down this road, and maybe you guys chime in at any time. I had written down just a few things. One of the big reasons is obviously having a point of contact for department heads. It's very cumbersome and difficult when you have a board of 5 commissioners that are mainly only here on Tuesdays for department heads to discuss issues. The other thing is you're only 1/5 of a vote, so really technically one person can't resolve the issue. You'd have to wait until Tuesday. So I think that would be a big plus for the department heads is the fact that they would have a point of contact during the week every day to go to. The other thing is a point of contact for citizens. When somebody from the public has an issue or something that's going on, having somebody here during the week to help them out, walk them through things, get some answers that are here that could get some immediate help, versus calling a commissioner and the commissioner saying, well, I'll bring it up at a meeting, but we don't have a meeting this week, so you have to wait 2 weeks. And so I think having a point of contact for the citizens is another big reason. The other thing is, like I kind of talked before, helping the department heads with issues. When an issue arises that needs to be dealt with in a timely manner, you have an individual that would be here to talk through those issues, get some help, get some resolve with that without having to wait for the commissioners to meet again. Like I said, with a point of contact for the department heads and the citizens, also a point of contact for the commissioners. We've had numerous times, and everybody's well aware, when we need to find out a question or we've got a problem or something. Who do you go to that understands the dynamics of what's going on in each department head, in each department, that could help out? For instance, if a good reason, I'll get to it down here too again, but during budgeting, we're not here all the time to have a good grasp on things that are going on. So to have a point person that is here, that if a commissioner has a question, they could go to and find a reason why certain things are being done or needs to be spent, because that administrator or coordinator is here all the time, understands what's going on, and has been in contact with the department heads to be able to alleviate some of those other issues as well. The other thing I think it would help too is bridging that gap between the board and the department heads. Having somebody here that, when there's needs to have some dialect between the commissioners or whatever, to have an administrator there that can help. Also, that they would understand the board's direction, so that if a department head had an issue, they could say, well, it's the board's intention that it be done this way. Let's try and resolve this issue in that direction. So just having somebody to bridge that gap. Like I said, with budgets, other issues. The other thing is having somebody with authority during that week to make decisions. As I said before, right now, who's the authority? If somebody needed a point person to make a decision immediately on something that needed to be done, who is it? There isn't anybody. You have to wait until the board meets. So I think that's a key issue is, what kind of person, not what kind of person, but having a person here that has some sort of authority to make decisions and be able to help and guide, without having to wait for the board to meet. Like I said, too, with negotiations, union negotiations, we're going through it right now. Having somebody here to help out, during that process, obviously would be a big help. Clarifying the board's position, whether it be to the citizens or the department heads, and obviously guiding the board in making decisions. One of the other things that I wanted to touch on briefly, too, in the past, we've talked about it, and Fred, I think you gave a great example today when you talk about, sometimes change, it can be difficult, it's change. But we try to change for the better. And in the past, we've had, I know, a number of department heads that have been leery of bringing in a coordinator or an administrator. They're saying, well, we don't want another layer of bureaucracy. We don't want somebody looking over our shoulder. But I think that's the wrong reason to be bringing somebody in. It's not to overlook. It's to help. I had some discussion with Mary about this, and she made a good point too. That if we look at each person under us is our customers, the board, when we look at it, it's not just our citizens, but it's our department heads. We're here to try and help our department heads do a good job. The department heads' customers are their employees. They help them do a good job, and then in turn, those employees help the citizens do a good job. So, I think that one of the big things is not having another layer of government, not having somebody look over somebody's shoulder. It's a tool to be able to help when help is needed that we don't have, and we've seen how cumbersome it has been, and everybody in this board is aware of it, of issues that come up. Who do you go to? What's going on? Who knows this? So I think it needs to be looked at as a good tool to help the commissioners, department heads, the citizens, the employees, and not looked at it as from you want to hire somebody to look over them and make sure they're doing their job. That has nothing to do with it. So anyway, those are some of the points that I guess I wanted to bring up on why I believe this would be a good route to go, in some of the reasons why I think we should be looking down this road.
Go ahead, Teresa.
Okay. I was looking at that on the agenda too, but I did a little bit different focus. Really, those are all good points. The only drawback is the cost, for us not being budgeted yet. But I went a different way. There's 3 forms of, I went through AMC also, of government. 52 counties have administrators, 15 have coordinators, and 20 of us use a county auditor as a management. And so I tried to get the difference between the administrator and the coordinator. The administrator is supervisor of all the county institutions and agencies and of the non-elected department heads. And the county coordinator does not have a supervisory role over the county department heads, elected or appointed, but works with them to submit annual budgets and stuff. And I did get a printout of what the difference between the two is. I talked to people at AMC district meeting. They said a county of our size would probably be like Fillmore, go with the coordinator position that would work with the department heads and not be their supervisor.
What I have heard in discussions with people from other counties is that the lines between administrator, the definitions of administrator and coordinator, those lines are pretty blurred.
Well, so here's a couple of things.
The job description would have to be rather carefully delineated.
And I don't want to get too far off the discussion today. I don't necessarily want to debate which direction we should go. Yeah. Just that we need to have a position, whether it be administrator or coordinator. But you did bring up a good point. To easily summarize, an administrator has statutory authority that a coordinator doesn't. Right. I did ask Julie Rink about that as far as a coordinator, and they said basically a board can write the job description and give them whatever authority we want. So if you said, hey, they can do this, which may be a good way of doing it, that, so anyway, you're right, and that's kind of the way it goes. and maybe that's a discussion for another time, is which direction we want to go. I just want to know that we want to go that direction. Cost, you bring up a good point. And the last point I wanted to bring up too. Everybody that I've talked to that has talked about having a position like this has said the same thing, that if you have a good coordinator administrator, that that position will pay for itself in gained efficiencies and all this kind of stuff. This is also one of those positions where I believe it is so imperative that you have it. This would be a good place to spend some money. When we look at this year, right now we have 130,000, or the levy could potentially have the 130 in it. So you could be able to fund this easily, this year. The other thing going forward we need to look at, obviously with our budgeting, when we look at, say for instance, the highway department, we added an extra $196,000 wheelage tax on there that should have been going to offset, some equipment purchases, things like that, okay, well, you could have had some money freed up there. I think there's definitely ways that the money aspect is well worth the position. And like I said, most people that I've talked to, actually everybody that I've talked to that's either had an administrator, coordinator, or like I said, a head of AMC or whatever, is also the same thing, that it's, a good administrator coordinator will basically fund itself for what you'll gain and pick up. So,
as far as I would just comment that as far as structurally, I wouldn't see it as usurping any of the responsibility of the board. I would look at it like, again, in the private sector, a CEO and a board of directors. The board of directors tells the CEO, this is where we want the company to go, get it there.
Right. Yeah.
And that's how I would look at this role. And then we would be presented with, here's the results of what you asked to be done. You approve of it or you disapprove of it. So as a board, we'd still have the final say on all kinds of things. The I don't want to call them minuscule, but the less the mundane things, that's what the person can deal with on a daily basis.
Well, we get into all kinds of problems here because we as a board are supposed to be overall management, taking that, to quote several people from AMC and other places, that 40,000-foot view. But in order to do that, we have to try to understand what's going on at ground level. And then if we really start digging into what's going on at ground level, we get censured in a way for, quote, micromanagement, unquote. So we're caught.
Well,
we really are caught sometimes.
Yeah, and we are handcuffed in a sense by the fact that we can't, more than two of us can't ever put our heads together.
You can't all meet and walk around. You can't discuss it openly. So it does make it, that's the hardest part about this whole thing.
It is.
Is the open discussion.
No. So, well, is that okay for today?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, is that the board's consensus, especially during budget time, keep going down this road?
I would say
have some more discussion.
I would really like to have more discussion on funding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that would
especially because we're still in the middle of negotiations.
Exactly.
We don't know where we're going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
So, but I don't think anybody is saying this would be a stupid idea.
No. Well, if the board would like, I guess I would like to maybe have something at the next meeting, just some continued discussion. Because I'd like to bring in Mary and John just to talk about their experience since they've worked at another county with that. And if we have more information to bring, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think we can keep discussing it.
And then maybe Carol, we could maybe talk some finance stuff too.
Yeah, she could find some money.
Oh yeah.
Just reach in your pocket, Carol. You got
it's around, Carol. Couple $100,000 quick.
But anyway,
not that pocket.
All right, anything else? Vaughn, do you have a comment? Good. I didn't mean.
I don't believe
I
this.
didn't mean
I
that.
really don't believe this.
It's just we have another meeting to go to yet,
Yeah.
so.
Well, and I suppose Craig too, you're from the public too, you got anything quick? No? Okay.
I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Can you second, Scott? All in favor?
Before I got a chance to make it.
All in favor?
Sewing it.
I haven't heard an
Aye.
aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you.